Hello, welcome to another lighting diagram lesson. My name is Trenton Hoshiko, and today we're talking about The Cellar of Oranges by Georges Seurat. This is a really cool image to me. It is so simple in its form, and this is just crayon on paper, but yet it has such a stark way this image actually works, and I thought it'd be really fun to talk about how to do this in a way that I think would be a little bit creative and a little bit experimental. But before we get to that, if you want to get my Filmmaker Tools template that is up here on the top, this is for Draw.io, which is a free and open source diagramming software that I use to make lighting diagrams. My template is also completely free. It's available on my Patreon. That link is down in the video description where you can go and directly download it. You don't have to join the Patreon. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to be a member or anything like that. I'm just trying to get it out there to help people out in making lighting diagrams to help them practice, lighting and the lighting theory, but also to help them communicate better with the teams that they're working with. So yes, that link is down in the video description. If you do want to join my Patreon, that link is also down there. The paid tiers start at just $2 and help support videos like these, but I also have a free tier that lets you know when I upload new videos, and I'd love for people to join. I am trying to reach 100 total members between the free and paid tiers right now. So let's just start by talking about the image itself, as we usually do. This is a very loose form image. You obviously can't tell that these are specifically oranges. There is obviously some sort of cart here. You can kind of see the wheel in this area, and you can see some stuff on it, but you don't know what it is actually. You're getting told it's the oranges by the title. Otherwise, you have this figure who's almost in a silhouette. Not 100%, but not either. One thing that I think is really interesting about this is the idea that you still get some definition on the coat and the torso while the legs are entirely blacked out. The silhouette isn't exactly straight on either. You can see that the actual shape of the shadow points left to right here. It's actually more the light is coming towards the direction that the guy is facing, but is all entirely on the other side of him, so that we get this entire kind of silhouette type form here, specifically with the pants and the hat, but the coat itself, like I said, has some definition still on it. So we don't want to entirely block out that silhouette, but we want to figure out a way to make this work out in a way that we can kind of visually replicate it. And I have kind of two ideas in mind. The other thing about this that I've been noticing is that he is kind of surrounded by this almost halo where there's negative space where it's not filled in by this kind of smoggy gray lines. And I'm not sure where this is supposed to be in particular. Could be Paris, could be London, could be somewhere else. But I like to imagine that this is kind of some industrial smoke mixed with morning fog that's creating this kind of haze around him. But he has this edge where it is actually still bright between the shape of the figure and the haze itself. It's kind of this halo that sits all the way around. There's not a really good spot to find it in particular, but it's kind of like right there. That's that lighter area versus over here. But we still also want to be able to get that darker area just like up here. And so you could use some vignetting of your lens or something of that sort to even make that a little bit more have more of an impression. And so the thing about this is that if you want that haze, I think the best way to do that is actually use haze. But I kind of had an idea for how you could do this on a little bit of a cheaper, more abstract budget, and to see how that could actually work, which would be maybe fun. So I'll do a diagram for that as well. But the main thing here that we're going to be talking about is the light going left to right, camera left to camera right, on the other side of our subject, creating an almost silhouetted figure. We might have some bounce that brings it back in, but let's start diagramming it using the floor plan tools that are built into Draw.io. I love these things because it makes it so simple to get started here. I am going to pretend that this is on a set of some sort. Since it's an abstract space, I don't think we have to worry about that too much, but this is something that you might be trying to get outside as well. If you don't have a huge, like professional Hollywood industrial size, fogging machine, you're probably not going to get haze like this unless you go somewhere where there is a hazy, misty fog. like this. If you wanted to just get this look where you have this, solitaire figure with the silhouette, you could get this most places, and then you could play around with depth of field or something like that to push the cart out of focus and create that separation still. Because I think the aspect of this that is not only that negative space that creates the, kind of halo around the subject, that is then encapsulated by these almost toxic vapors and fog enveloping around their space, but also the idea that there's a separation between the clarity of the lines on the person and the cart that's presumably, just several feet behind them. And I don't have a cart, so I'm going to use this dresser because it looks like it has little tiny wheels there if you look at it. And this is presumably along a street area. With the idea of pretending this is a stage, you would maybe have a backdrop, or you maybe have a backdrop the rest of your set, or just make this completely abstract. So I'm going to just go with a backdrop idea back here. And then the idea is that the cart is along the street, so we're gonna have kind of a angle to it, and then he's standing in front of the cart. Something of the sort like this is probably how I would set it up. Maybe moving him this way just a little. So like I said, the main way that you're going to get this much smoke in here, smoke, fog, vapor diffusion, is by actually having a fog machine. Probably a pretty big one. If you're using a space like this, you would need a big one. If you're using outside, you would definitely need like an industrial kind of one, or to really kind of control the space and the airflow through it to make sure that you get it. The other aspect of this is that this is in black and white, and that helps with controlling how that contrast actually functions as well. So I would have him right here like this. I would probably start by putting a big lamp with a Fresnel. This could be basically whatever you have access to, but this is going to be your key light. And it's going to be back over here, pretty much in line with him, creating this shadow. It's not exactly 45 degrees. It's a little bit closer to like almost like straight behind him, but we do have a little bit of an angle this way. So I'm kind of rotating it slightly off with angles in here. You can't get it exactly, but I think it'll be close enough to work properly. And so I am using a Fresnel for this to help focus that beam. But, this is a crayon drawing. Those hard lines of the shadow on the ground there aren't so hard. And if it was this foggy, that shadow probably wouldn't be so very hard. So what you could do is throw a little bit of silk in front of that, pretty close to the Fresnel lens. And or work it back and forth depending exactly to just adjust how soft you want that to be. I want it to have a little bit of softness, but definitely a lot of focus that the Fresnel actually brings to the lamp. I wouldn't use something like a softbox for this, just because I want to make sure that we get that focus on the light so nice along our subject here. Now, in real life, you probably would get a little bit of an edge light right here along the front of the legs, but note how there is not. This person is very like starkly silhouetted in terms of their legs at least. But because we do want to have a little bit of definition back in the jacket and all that kind of stuff, I would say what we could do is take a bounce and put it somewhere right around here and maybe catch some of that light and bounce it back in to the camera side. Now that's the important thing here, is that I want to be bouncing it back into the camera side, because I am going to take a wag flag or whatever kind of negative fill that you might have and try to put it here so that we are sucking some of that light right out of the back here, because you can see that back edge is pretty dark, especially to create that contrast. Like I said, if you have a backdrop of like a cityscape or a city street, something of that sort, or you could, if you really want to get this kind of sort of abstract space, you could use a white backdrop back here, and especially if you're using black and white photography for this. But that wag flag is going to just help make sure the back is dark, The chest is going to be a little bit lighter because it is being lit by the lamp right here. And then we're going to bounce some light back in just so we get some various definition on the actual, like, you know, coat. The coat would have to probably be a lighter color. The pants are probably black trousers. Maybe the coat is a lighter brown or something of that sort, just so it holds some of that light while still getting a nice amount of, you know, shadow to it. I'd keep this light not super high up, top down. The shadow does extend off of our actual frame here. So you could, you know, manipulate that a little bit, but it's not like top down, you know, the shadow's not ending right here halfway, you know, halfway through the circle, because it's top down, it is stretching it out a little bit. So I put this, you know, roughly 45 degrees, you know, and then experiment with it and adjust it as needed. But this is approximately what you would need. And then you would take your camera and put it back down here. I think that this is kind of a voyeuristic portrait here. It's from a little bit further away, and there's not actual compression here. That's not this kind of, you know, painting or, you know, piece of art. But I think that if we used a little compression, that would work well, because he does kind of look on top of his cart just a little bit, you know, when you look at him versus the cart. So I would say we could move the camera back a little bit and use something like a 70 or an 85 kind of lens range, just slightly into the telephoto. We would put it right about here, and we would get our shot. Depending on exactly how much you want this to be fogged in the way that it is, you would take a fog machine and fill your studio space with fog. So that way it creates this, you know, edge of fog around it. And then I would also maybe use a lens or a filtering setup that we could, you know, or just even in post, use some vignetting to push the eye towards the center. This is then a good reason to use white backdrops here if you want this to be abstracted, that like the cloud bank is capturing all that light and holding it and making it, you know, envelop around him. Then you could have the white backdrops there, and that helps with a little bit of that idea of the halo effect around our subject here. This is a difficult one to recreate just directly into a camera medium without, you know, digital manipulation and that kind of stuff. We're trying to do these things with lighting and in camera, but this is a little more difficult because there's a lot of artist interpretation here. That's why art is so cool, is that how you see things is not exactly how somebody else sees things. How you interpret something or can interpret it then through your artistic medium, whether it is photography, whether it's filmmaking, whether it's crayon on paper, whether it's traditional painting, whether it's, you know, expressionist modern painting. I think that that's one of the really cool things. And so this isn't a realistic image here, but we're going to try to capture the essence of it through the silhouette, the fog, and then we're going to use the compression of the lens just a little bit while also making sure we can use a lower f-stop to push the focus out on the cart right here. We don't want to see the cart. We just want to see the person standing center frame against this backdrop. The cart is almost part of the backdrop itself. It fades off into the distance. And so you would take this room and you would fill it with filmmaking fog. Now, safety warning here, definitely use good filmmaking fogs. It can be difficult in the lungs. Check with people to make sure they don't have asthma or other issues that could present harm to the, you know, the crew or, you know, cast that you have when using fog. Don't use actual smoke. And just, yeah, be really careful on sourcing it and the density of it, because, you know, you don't want to have anybody have any issues while you are trying to get a really cool shot. So this is the basic way that I would light something like this. If it really needed more, what I would probably do is take this backdrop, and let's just call this now the white backdrop. I would just take this and I would use some banks of light right behind it to help create this effect here and to create that silhouette. I think that that would help make sure the cart's silhouetted. And since this is abstract, you can kind of play with a little bit more. But yeah, something like this where you have the, you know, the white coming in. And then if that's the case, you could also do things like take more wag flags and actually darken along the back, or, you know, create pockets of darkness a little bit more, something more along these lines, depending exactly on how you have your lighting setup, your goals, and your budget. So I say that this is the more costly way, but you get a little bit more experimental with it to a degree. This is the lower budget where you're still doing some of that experimental idea. And, in this case, you could maybe forego either the wag flag or the bounce. If you couldn't afford it, you could use something like a 5-in-1 reflector to have the black side or the white side for either of these, if that's cheaper for you. But yeah, this is kind of the basic way I'd light something like this. And this is the more advanced way I'd light something like this. But so my last idea here is just something that would be kind of cool and in a way that I would think would maybe make it a little bit cheaper to do something like this, where you don't need to have all of that fog, like actually. What it would be is to take this idea and to move the card just a little bit further back and move the person a little bit towards the camera, take a shower curtain or some other semi-translucent material and put that between our subject and the backdrop and the whole rest of the scene. And that material, if you didn't have it in focus, should make this more blurred, more, abstract, look like it's behind a bank of fog, because that's how those like shower curtains and those kinds of materials work, right? It's meant to be in a shower. It's meant to be a frosted glass look so that you have privacy. Well, if you put that right here and you have that cart behind it, then it's going to be suddenly looking like it's much more enveloped in fog. Now, this idea wouldn't work as well if you see the bottom like you do down here. So I would say maybe more in a medium type shot, this could work pretty easily, I would think. And then you're casting your light through it, so you probably wouldn't need the silk because it would be softened just somewhat by, the properties of the material itself. As I've talked about in, other videos where I talk about like shower curtain diffusion, that kind of stuff. If you want to see any of those, I will have them linked down below. They're available on my channel. But something along these lines where you're having this light come in, you're bouncing some back on, it's being spread around him a little bit, but he is now physically being separated from the rest of the space. And does the audience know that in particular? No, they don't, but I think they could be able to feel it. If you wanted to sell this a little bit more, you could use fog, but like on a much cheaper side of fog in a can or cloud in a can. I don't remember what the brand's actually called. There probably are several now. And use that and spray it on the actor's side. And then that way you do have the light coming through. You do have the swirling of the fog just a little bit, but the background, whatever backdrop you have, well, if you even don't have a backdrop, but the card itself is all just obscured ever so slightly, caught in this misty swirl that is being emphasized by the light passing through the material onto the person, as well as the swirling of the actual canned fog that you have, on the side. That would be a lot cheaper than a lot of fog machines, probably a lot easier to film in most spaces, rather than having to have a larger, space that you could then fill entirely with fog. Because that can get pricey or at least time consuming. And I would say that if you have your Fresnel here, you can create a circular shape of light on the surface of that shower curtain or the other semi-transparent material. And that could then also help you get these kinds of vignetted edges as well, in a very cool abstract way. So there we have 3 different ways to light an image like The Cellar of Oranges by Georges Seurat. I think this was a really fun one because it's so abstract. It's different than a lot of the portraits we do, which are kind of seated portraits. This is much more voyeuristic. It's in theory a street portrait, basically, instead of like street photography. Its form is a lot more abstract, and the medium itself it's drawn with is abstract. So we can take those elements and bring them into our images as we're trying to create visual stylings for our projects. Like I said at the beginning, if you want to get my Filmmaker Tools template, it's available for free on my Patreon. The link is down in the description. That's just to help people out. If you want to join Patreon, I'm trying to reach 100 total members. I'd love to have you. If you want to see more videos like this that talk about micro-budget filmmaking, cinematography, lighting, and equipment, I have several videos coming out each month. And if you want to subscribe, I'd love to have you. If you did like this video or it helped you out, please give it a like down below. That really helps me with the YouTube algorithm and reaching other viewers who also like these kinds of lighting diagram and lighting discussion videos. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments down below. I'd love to read comments. And if you want to pick up equipment that would help you light something like this, I have affiliate links down in the video description that also help support this channel at no extra cost to you. Thank you so much for watching. please, this week, go out of your way to take care of somebody. There are so many things going on in the world, and there is a lot of people not having a great time. And if you can do just one thing or two things that go out of your way ever so slightly to help somebody out, make them have a better day, it will make a lasting impact not only for them, but also for you. And as always, I hope you take care of yourselves and have a wonderful week ahead of you.